Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's such a heavy responsibility over my shoulders. Many people think that I'm the savior. Many people think that I'm an angel. And many think that I'm the devil. And I don't know who to believe. I'm just a very simple individual. And I have a story. I have been in a big fight against many forces that tried to steal my freedom. And I had to fight so hard for my freedom. I went against the flow of my own society, which many considered me as a traitor. And I don't blame them. They have a reason. Because I went against the interest of the tribe. And I thought that the higher interest of humanity was and still more important. If we have to choose between the interest of the group, the family, or the higher interest of the collective consciousness, I think the individuals must choose the higher interest of humanity. So this is basically my case, and I'm not here to defend myself or to build my case. I'm here to communicate with you within the best of my ability of the true nature of Hamas. Because we have a problem. We have division, and there are many accusations. There are hate groups using this confusion, this chaos to project hatred, to spread lies. And they're accusing everybody of lying. So basically, tonight, I will use this energy, this opportunity, where we can focus on the facts on the ground to be able to see things for what they are. Because without truth, without being anchored in truth, we will be swayed with so many opinions, so many ideas, and confusion will lead to more hatred. Hatred will manifest in the form of terrorism. Maybe some people think it's a gossip to just have an opinion about something, but they don't understand the significance of words because they are actions. And many people are not responsible. They haven't lived it. They don't have a first-hand experience. It's a second-hand knowledge. All of it is borrowed. And there is only one way to know the truth: to experience it. Then those who have experience or encounter with truth, it is almost impossible to convey it. In principle, my father was one of the co-founders of Hamas organization. And I was there when Hamas was established. I remember his excitement about the movement. He told me a lot about it. Then I saw the movement developing, growing. Few years later, Hamas was committing suicide bombing attacks. Maybe some of you weren't even there. What we witnessed on October 7th, that was not the first attack by Hamas. Prior to that, Hamas killed thousands of Palestinians, of Israelis, and hundreds of Palestinians. And Hamas is responsible for the retaliation and sabotaging the entire peace process in the Middle East. Many call them terrorists. But as a person who witnessed their birth, their development, and the atrocities committed by them today, I tell you something, they are beyond a terrorist organization. They pose as a national, resistant movement with the intention to liberate what's so-called Palestine. And I think this is Hamas' first lie, because they are not a resistant movement. Hamas is a religious, ideological movement raging a war, a holy war, against a race, against a nation. They are not a political party. If they were a political party, then they would believe in political borders. But they want a global state. So there is no such a thing as Palestine to Hamas movement. And all the pro-Palestine group, which of course they have the right to express themselves. I'm not against freedom of speech, that everyone have their own independent opinion. But unfortunately, they are given directly and indirectly support to a savage group that just committed genocide against entire communities. They wiped out everything in their way, killing children, women, raping, burning, systematically, ethnically cleansing a race only because they are Jewish. I saw that firsthand, documented by Hamas themselves. I was not surprised by Hamas brutality, because I lived with them in prison for about 27 months. And if you want to get to know someone, spend with them time in prison for 27 months. They tortured Palestinian people, and that was in Israeli prison, because Hamas had suspicion that some Palestinians gave information to the Israeli intelligence, so they didn't know who was, and they tortured many people in the process. During the time I was spending in prison, especially the first imprisonment, dozens were killed and tortured on the hand of Hamas. But October 7, that was completely different. What they did was, or could be, the worst crime in our modern day. And of course, when people see the war victims happening in Gaza, the free world also don't like to see bloodshed. And people are having a hard time, which side do I take? Is it Palestine or Israel? And of course, we took sides and we created division. But are we seeing things for what they are? Are we seeing Hamas for what it is? A radical, religious movement with global ambition that does not value the human life, that does not respect anything that is different, does not believe in dialogue, does not believe in democracy, does not believe in any philosophy or constitution outside of Islam, outside of Quran. Very narrow-minded people, but in the meantime, very dangerous. On the other hand, we see the democratic model of the State of Israel, a very creative and productive nation that has contributed so much to life. Israel has been extending its hands to the region for more than 70 years, since its establishment, trying to build bridges of understanding, to build peace with the Arab nations. But the Arab nations insisted since 1948, since the establishment of the State of Israel, to annihilate the State of Israel first, before they establish an Arab state. The international community offered the Arabs to build an Arab state side by side the state of Israel back in 1948. But the Arabs refused. They came back in 1967 with the intention to annihilate the state of Israel, and they failed. Israel was extremely outnumbered by the Arabs. Hundreds of millions of Arabs surrounding the state of Israel, newborn, very small state. And when they lost the war, Israel controlled the West Bank, Sinai, and the Golan Heights. Since then, the Arabs have been trying so hard to destroy the state of Israel. 95% of the wars between Arabs and Israel were initiated by Arab countries against Israel, where Israel is always at defense. So we have a big problem. And we cannot just take sides without educating ourselves on what's really going on. Because if we end up supporting savages who just committed genocide, not just a terrorist attack. A terrorist attack usually is committed by a terrorist organization with political hatred. This is what motivates them. But to go and ethnically cleanse more than 20 communities, killing everything in your way, and everything is documented. This is what Israel suffered on October 7th. And this cannot be compared to the war victims in Gaza. And we cannot compare it by saying, okay, we have here 1,500 victims, and there we have 10,000 victims. And by the way, all Hamas statistics, not to be trusted. None of their statistic is accurate. And many of their footage came from Syria. Old videos taken in the Syrian civilian war that they say this is from Gaza. And many of it is fake because this is their propaganda. And who to blame? The free world started to blame Israel for the war victims in Gaza, but no one is condemning Hamas for taking their own people as human shields. And of course, in my case, I'm not surprised because even my own father, when he had to choose between Hamas and his oldest son, he chose the ideology. He sacrificed me. He told the whole world, you can kill him. I am not his father, and I will not come after you. So if you want to ask me about how Hamas actually, how much they care about children, their own children, Golda Meir at some point said, when Arabs love their children more than they hate us, there could be a chance for peace. It's a very true statement. And I'm fed up and tired of this entire conflict, just blind hatred towards people who are just trying to coexist in this region. And we're not talking about criminals who came and stole the land. We're talking about legal migrants came under the British mandate in the past century, and they were able to develop the country so fast that they went ahead all Arab countries combined with almost no resources because the Jewish nation believes in education. And this is their secret. After many years of studying the Jewish people, traveling throughout the world, meeting with their communities everywhere, I saw one thing in common that gives them power, and that's education. While unfortunately, the other side is inciting, teaching children hatred, teaching generations to blame with corrupt leadership that never took responsibility for anything. So when we look at the origins of this suffering and this conflict, we cannot just see, okay, I'm pro this, I'm anti that. No, it's a lot more complicated. And it's very important for us before we take sides, that we understand, are we on the side of truth or are we on the side of falsehood? And there is only one truth in this situation. And if it's true, whether if it's true or not, you cannot say nearly true. It has to be 100% true, and everything outside that is false. So I can go on and on for eternity. It's very important to understand before I finish this introduction, and we can move then to questions and answers. And I would like to communicate with you directly to see what's on your mind. And I hope that I will be able to satisfy your curiosity. But before we go there, have you noticed that everybody within the Palestinian leaderships have been asking for a Palestinian state, Palestinian state? But none of them is talking about a Palestinian nation. Because in order to have a state, you need a nation. And all the selfish leaderships, they just want a state. They don't want a nation. Because a state brings power, money, prestige, entourage. And a nation requires selfless leadership, where a true leader has to give up all desires in order to build a nation. It's totally the opposite. And none of those so-called leaders of Palestine, from Yasser Arafat all the way to Hamas, bunch of criminals. I'm responsible for my words. Bunch of criminals that stole people's resources. The most corrupt revolution in history. It's not in their interest to end the conflict because they profit out of it. They know only how to thrive in chaos. They don't know how to create, how to build. They don't like order. If there is no conflict, there is no need for them. This is why it's in their interest to keep it going for eternity. You can give them all the solutions in the world and they will reject it. So we need to understand that these people are profiting from this conflict. They're just using what's so-called Palestinian cause. It's non-existential. It's a broad term that anybody can use. Even the angry mob here in Michigan is using it. Everyone who has a little bit of hatred, they are trying to project through this device called Palestine. This is why I say it's non-existential. We don't know what it is. Anybody from Putin to Mexican cartel dressed up like Hamas, projecting Hamas. Because hate is an ideology. And this is what's in common between them and Hamas. So are we going to allow a bunch of criminals hijack an entire society and we give them support, empowering the predator against the victim, against the prey? That's not acceptable. That's not the way Americans think. And are we going to allow people to spread hatred and anti-Semitism, hating the Jewish people? For what? You know, we need to look around and see the contribution of the Jewish people to the American society and to the rest of the world in every field of life. It's not acceptable. And Israel is fighting for its life. I'm not here to advocate on behalf of the state of Israel. But this is my personal experience, and it really bothers me. Because as long as we are not seeing things for what they are, this conflict will go for eternity. And this is not only Israel's fight, by the way. This is my fight as well. Since I was a very little child, Hamas wanted to destroy me. And I don't want to go through so many details, but the harder they tried, the stronger I became. And it's not coincidental that I'm standing here and I'm fighting against them. And many people accuse me of saying, okay, you're a Zionist propaganda. I say, no, you're totally mistaken. Maybe me and the Zionists and Israel have something in common to destroy Hamas, to eradicate them. because they are very dangerous, and they are going against the evolution of life, of humanity. They don't value the human life. They want me dead. They want Israel dead. They want the United States dead. What else does need to be said about Hamas? I cannot believe that we are even discussing this. But this is the reality of the situation. And again, I think this is enough for now, enough introduction. And please, if you have any question, we will continue with the conversation, and I will answer as much as I can. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Please. Please. Thank you. Thank you.
Mosab, thank you so much. That truly was amazing. And now the program will continue with a fireside chat between Mosab and Ted, which will be mediated by Max Katz. Thank you.
So before I begin, pour yourself some water. We can make this a little more casual. Feel free to talk off each other as well. I have some questions, but no one really wants to hear me speak. So this is something you guys touched on a little bit, but I wanted to take it a step further and apply it a little bit more to campus. So campus discourse right now regarding the events on and after October 7th have been marked by widespread use of terms like genocide, apartheid, and European settler colonialism, and we touched on that, the both of you did. In large respect, these terms have been propagated from the top down, from members of Congress to university administration to professors and GSIs and even students on campus. So can you both first elaborate on how Israel is not, or I mean, maybe is, but it's not, a genocidal regime, an apartheid state, and a product of European settler colonialism, but more importantly, as we are here today, because there is a vote, it indicates that many students do believe that Israel is those things. So how do we engage in productive conversation with those students, and is it even worth trying in some respect?
Thanks. First of all, I just, Max, I'll answer the question, but I want to take a moment, Mosab. I have the privilege. I served in Congress for a long time. I now have the privilege of running a big NGO. I spend time with a lot of important figures that I've been honored to meet. There are very few in all the years that I've done this whose presentations I just would consider heroic, and I think that's what we saw tonight, and I want to acknowledge it and thank you for it. And I'll quickly touch on this again. I mean, we talked about what's in this resolution. You can't be a settler if there's been a connection to the land for 3,000 years. The story of the modern state of Israel is perhaps the best story of liberation of a people in its land, having existed there through all of the different ruling parties who have been there all the way through the Ottoman Turks and then the British until the creation of Israel, the modern state of Israel. I think it's important to remember that. I think it's important just in terms of genocide. Look, I talked about that before. It's really pernicious to suggest that the actions taken by Israel in self-defense in response to this truly genocidal organization don't take it from me, as Mosab points out, that the Hamas charter itself calls for the destruction of Israel and massacre of Jews. It's a genocidal organization that Israel is defending itself against. That's a really important fact. And Israel is an apartheid state. It's been thrown around for a long time. It completely ignores the fact that the state of Israel is majority minority. It's not a white colonialist state. It's a state that is majority people of color. Those are just important facts that can't be ignored, and it's why I think this is so important. While I'm at it, if I could just quickly touch on some of the others that I know happened here on campus. When you're chanting intifada, intifada, and you're doing it at any time, but especially after what happened on October 7th, and you're out there chanting something that for so many of us immediately triggers the second intifada, when 1,000 Israeli civilians were killed by suicide bombers in cafes and on buses and at Passover Seders and at hotels all around Israel. That kind of language isn't political speech. And when people talk about March chanting from the river to the sea, again, I'll turn it over to you. From the river to the sea, what does that mean? Well, it means from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Free of what? Free of Jews. That's what that means. It envisions a land free of Jews in which the Jews are pushed into the sea, quite literally, totally consistent with Hamas's aims, as Mosab said. But Mosab, please.
To add to your point, whether if Israel is an apartheid state or not, it's the most idiotic question out there. First of all, like for example, we have 1.6 million Arabs in the state of Israel. That's a huge percentage. They have representatives in the parliament, the Israeli Knesset. Arabic, the language Arabic, is an official language in the state of Israel. Arabs, Bedouins, they participate in the army, in the special forces, in the intelligence. And hate is a crime against minorities in Israel. And it's not only Arabs are minority in Israel. We have Druze, that's another Muslim religious sect. We have Christians. People practice yoga. There are all type of, literally, you go to Tel Aviv, you'll find thousands of people doing yoga all at once. The Israeli kitchen is from every corner in the Arab world, from Morocco to Yemen to Iraq. And there's so many also Jewish people who came from Arab countries. They were forced to relocate after the establishment of State of Israel. They were kicked out of the Arab world. You rarely find a Jewish community in the Arab world. And all these hundreds of thousands of Jews lost their property, everything, and they had to come to Israel. So they brought with them a lot from the Arab culture. They're part of the Middle East, fundamental part of the Middle East, and they can coexist. In fact, many of them are more Arabs than the Arabs themselves, with a much better understanding of life. So to say that Israel is an apartheid state, it's untrue, unfair, and very offensive to the Jewish people. Israel is pro-life. It's a civil constitution where every minority is protected. I can go on and on and on with many stories of what Israel stands for. The humanitarian aspect of Israel, if I had to compare it to any surrounding Arab country. So to vote on such a thing and to have it sponsored by the dean of the State of Michigan University, I think it was very hard for me to believe it, because it's very similar to something like, how about we vote on rape also? Why not? You know, if it's a matter of opinion and the opinion of a majority, we can just vote. And if a majority of people say, oh, rape is okay, then it's not a crime anymore. There are certain things that we cannot vote about. They're just common sense, that we know that the truth of the state of Israel is democratic, it's civilian constitution, it believes in a human value, it believes in diversity, it protects the rights of minority. End of the story. The United States of American government understand the reality on the ground. Intelligence services, they know. European Union, they know. So since when some group, we don't know who they are, we don't know what's their motive, we don't know who's actually mobilizing them down the street, a mob that force such a respectful educational institution to vote on such a thing. It's absurd. I cannot believe that people have to make choice within 2 or 3 days to say yes or no. So I hope that you got my picture.
Thank you both for that, Congressman and Mosab. I think what a lot of students on campus are struggling with is that many students do believe these things, and so they are not only in our classes, but maybe our friends and our roommates. And so to that extent, how do we engage in conversation with them about these issues? Because the Israel-Palestine conflict, or really the Israel-Hamas war after October 7th, touches every corner of our campus. And so how do we engage with them constructively and not lead to aggression? You know, the same thing that we're working so hard to fight against.
Mosab, we got your picture. We really like it. Why don't you keep painting?
Well, I think dialogue. This is what we need. In fact, tonight, I would have been a lot more comfortable if I had an opponent from the what's so-called pro-Palestine movement. And I called them out for a debate, because I think dialogue is the best way. It's not being angry, and it's not projecting hatred towards a minority. It's through dialogue. If they really believe in their truth, then it's better that they sit and let's talk about it. And I invite all of you to talk to them if they are willing to listen. And many people are in denial, and it's very hard to rationalize with them. You know, like Israel hit a dead end with Hamas because Hamas does not believe in dialogue. Hamas did not want to drop their idea to destroy the state of Israel. So how can you sit down with such a group who wants to annihilate you? In principle, if they believe in your existence, then you can sit down with them. It's why democracies should never negotiate with terrorists. This is a principle. Why? Because terrorists don't believe in dialogue, don't believe in the foundations of democratic model. Hence, democracies don't legitimize terrorists by sitting on a negotiating table, because you can never satisfy their ambition as long as they use violence to achieve their political agendas. So this is what makes us different. And this is how I would like it to be in the United States. Now, I left a region full of bloodshed because they don't have dialogue. This is what makes the United States of America superior. Because even though I have different opinion than yours or than theirs, we figure it out through dialogue, through democracy, through voting, through election, on solid foundations, and the common sense that we all agree on. So this is what I invite everybody, that we never lose our sight. Then we become violent, then it becomes hate crime, then it becomes mass shooting at some point. We don't want the United States to become a Middle East. Please don't do that.
Look, there is a lot to agree on if people are willing to engage in dialogue. But as Mosab said, if your view is that Israel has no right to exist, that calls for the destruction of Israel and the massacre of Jews is something that should be tolerated, if not celebrated, there's no room for constructive dialogue. That's not where most people are. And there are a lot of people you know who aren't as knowledgeable as you, who won't spend the time. I mean, your challenge is, if you're here, my guess is you knew a lot already. If you didn't know a lot already, you're going to know more after this program than you did before. And you're still going to have to figure out how to distill that down into something that you can explain to people who aren't really paying attention, but who care about you. There are a lot of people that you're going to be in dialogue with who know that there's something wrong in the way, in people who are calling for the destruction of the one Jewish state. They know that they're uncomfortable with protests where people are supporting the terrorists who slaughtered 1,200 people. They know that when they look on TV at protests around the country and they see swastikas and they see violence, they know that's wrong. Your job is to actually engage in the dialogue piece that meets them where they are and that helps them fill in the blanks, that answers the questions they have, that makes this all very simple for them in the way that we've been discussing about what Israel is, what its position is in a region where it stands out as the sole democracy, where minority rights are respected, where it is a country made up of people from all over the world. That's your job going forward. I wouldn't suggest, Max, that it's up to you to go stand down, face down the people who are protesting in support of Hamas. I wouldn't ask you to do it. I don't think anybody wants to do it. And I think most people look at that and know that there's a problem. But for all of the people that you do know and who care about you and will listen to you, then helping them understand what's at stake here in this vote and what it means to the university and what it means to you personally, that's the kind of dialogue that can help really move things forward on this campus.
Absolutely, and thank you both. I'm glad you guys touched on the idea of Israel as a democracy, because that's kind of the next place I wanted to go. But Mosab, when we spoke earlier today, you mentioned that in some capacity, one of Israel's biggest impediments is that as a democracy, it's limited in its ability to fight in the same way as Hamas does, and that impedes its ability to eradicate Hamas in its entirety. So in this specific instance, would you say that you see democracy as a barrier to peace?
No, not at all. Because what's the alternative to democracy? And what's the alternative to the democratic process? It's chaos, it's violence, it's destruction. You know, what Hamas and many of Hamas fans in the United States, I think unconsciously, they are driven by a desire for revolution. They want a quick fix. They don't want evolution where you start from zero and you build it up, you build your consciousness, you build your creativity, you build your skill. And this is what you are doing here, because I think most of us here believe in education. This is your evolution. You take it step at a time, slow progress, but determination that will take you there. But many, they want a quick fix. They don't want to invest the effort, the energy to construct their future. So when they look and they see that they are lost, now they are looking for a revolution. And I don't like it. I think for the 21st century, we arrived at understanding that evolution works and slow progress is great. And we live in a dependent existence. So all this hatred, let's go, let's kill them, they're the bad guys, and taking sides and expressing rage. This is not the way, because they pay the bill in blood. This is what revolution does, and this is Hamas mentality, and many other revolutions around the world. Call it Palestinian, call it Che Guevara, call it Fidel Castro, call it communism, whatever it is, it didn't work. I like the American model. So democracy cannot be an obstacle in the way towards peace, but democracy cannot coexist with narrow-minded people who believe only in violence to dominate. This type of individuals, as long as there is a human society and there is a human condition, we will have this type of individuals. Throughout the centuries, they exist today, and they will exist tomorrow. That they are lazy, that they love to blame, and they don't like to take responsibility. Delusional, they don't see things for what they are. Why do we educate ourselves? Why do we adapt Plato and Socrates and the Greek philosopher approach towards the human problem? This is democracy. Because when we don't see things for what they are, we put them to practice for a term, 4 years, 6 years, and if the theory doesn't work in practice, we drop the theory, we move on, or we adjust. That's the democratic approach. And I prefer this, because the alternative means chaos, violence, confusion, hatred, where nobody is safe to go anywhere. Democracy is not perfect. And democracy is, in fact, a cure. It's like a medicine for something called the human condition, that we don't see things for what they are. So, democracy is a solution. It hasn't solved the human condition or the human problem, but I prefer a climate where democracy is dominating, not a bunch of savages who want to dominate, have limitless lust to dominate territory, humanity, power. There is no room for this type of individuals, and I think all democratic models around the world, in the United States, in Israel, and in Europe, wherever they are, should be united, fighting united against any savage group to prove them wrong, that humanity is united against this type of narrow-minded people, radical savages who want to destroy, steal, and dominate. It's not acceptable. So democracy isn't the problem. Democracy, in my opinion, is the solution for this type of situation.
And what does democracy give you? It doesn't make it harder. It's the answer. And this, what's happening right now, is it's a moment that requires moral clarity, something that we're too often uncomfortable talking about. But this is democracy on the one hand, and exactly what Mosab said, the violence and the chaos and the hatred of another entity. This isn't This isn't a democratic debate about what's happening. This is a democratic state in the state of Israel, and it's a terror entity that runs Gaza, that has sown fear among its own people, that has taken the billions of dollars that have come into Gaza meant to take care of the people of Gaza, used instead to build these terror tunnels, and the command centers underneath Gaza, the places where the terrorists go to hide while they take the civilians and they put them in harm's way so that they can sacrifice them because they think that more dead Palestinians will help their cause across the world. That's what's happening there. Contrast that with what happens in a democratic state. In the democratic state of Israel, instead of the hatred and the violence, you see a country that where women's rights are valued and prized, where LGBT equality is valued and prized and recognized. You see a country that is leading the world in combating climate change. You see a country that is the first on the ground anywhere in the world where there's a humanitarian disaster, providing relief to whatever that country is and whoever its people are. This is what happens in democracy, and if it sounds like those are that I'm just ticking off a bunch of progressive issues, well, you're darn right I am, because the one thing that should be clear to everyone is that whenever anyone on this campus or anywhere else tells you that you're not welcome in their progressive group, fighting climate change, fighting for LGBTQ equality, fighting for women's rights, fighting to address whatever the challenges of the day are, if they tell you you're not welcome there because you believe that efforts to dismantle the Jewish state are outrageous and anathema, they're completely inconsistent with who they are as progressives. If that's what they tell you, then the answer is, in a democracy, you look them in the eye and you tell them that standing on the side of an entity in which all of those values that they claim to prize, that are so important in America and that are so important in Israel, but are violated and crushed every day, if that's who they're supporting, there is nothing progressive about that position at all, and you should proudly say that to them, and you should demand that they actually explore what the facts really are.
And so you guys touched on the idea of peace, and that is the central goal of a democracy. And so, Mosab, in your book, Son of Hamas, you discussed that part of the reason you defected from Hamas was in large part due to this ideology of murder and murder as a political weapon and as a tool. And to that end, a few weeks ago, you were on Piers Morgan Uncensored, but you said that war is the only way quote, war is the only way to move toward peace between the Israeli government and the Palestinian people. And so to that end, how do we, as Americans or as supporters of Israel, advocate for war, knowing that might will likely only bring more loss?
Many people are mistaken if they think you can achieve peace all the time through dialogue. When dialogue, negotiations, reason, rationality come to a dead end, then there is nothing left but the use of force. For 17 years, Israel extended its hand to Hamas. The international community, especially the United States, encouraging Hamas to drop their idea of annihilating the state of Israel. It was the condition that you cannot be part of the peace process without dropping your idea to annihilate a race. And Hamas could not do that, to accept Israel's right to exist. Without going back through the history of Hamas and how many crimes they have committed since their existence, 35 years in the making, building momentum. And on October 7th, they committed a genocide. This is a very important thing to understand. First of all, that Hamas nature is not a national organization. It's only using a national cause called the Palestinian cause, and a very broad term. Keep that in mind. Second, they commit a genocide, not a terrorist attack. Don't be mistaken. Define a genocide. Look into the Hamas own media documenting their attacks and see what they did to humanity. The darkness, the embodiment of evil. Then it did not stop there. They escaped after their crime, and they took an entire society, the Gazan people, as human shields. So Hamas' first crime was committing a genocide against the race. Then they took human shields. Children, women, building bunkers, tunnels under hospitals, schools, using schools, mosques as missile launching pads. This is their second crime. The third crime against humanity. They kidnapped infants, children, women, elders, took them hostages with a demand to release mass murderers. You saw the infants, you saw the children. How can anyone with consciousness still believe that this is a political issue? Anyone who sees things for what they are, he say or she say no to this. You are swapping or exchanging infants, babies, with monsters who have blood on their hand, spending 100 years supposed to be in prison. They want these terrorists, those savages, back on the street. This is why Hamas took hundreds of hostages. This is their third crime. Multiple crimes against humanity done simultaneously by the same savage group, and we're still debating whether they are okay or not okay. So Israel was left with no other choice but to use force. And force is the last resort. Philosophers in the East and in the West, enlightened avatars, validated the use of force when all other means fall. And in this case, in Hamas' case, there was no way around it but to use the force. There are civilian casualties, but their blood is on the hands of Hamas and on the hands of Hamas alone. Because Israel warned the civilians of Gaza to evacuate. It gave them 21 days to escape, but they still insist on staying to give Hamas cover. You know why? Because unfortunately, many Gazans support Hamas and many Gazans voted for Hamas. And the majority of Gazans hated Israel. And many choose to be silent. And a majority of the Arab world, not only the Gazans, failed to condemn Hamas and say this does not represent the Arab people. They failed to condemn Hamas. This is their biggest mistake. And when such a society fail their moral responsibility, at least, I don't want to say to eradicate Hamas, but at least morally, to take a moral responsibility and say, we are different. This does not represent our religion, our culture. But instead, they gave Hamas cover and they failed to condemn Hamas. This is their problem. So Israel is left with no other choice but to defend itself. And all the victims of Gaza that you see, remember my words, they are war victims. Very different type of victims than October 7 victims. October 7 victims, they were victims of a genocide. This is the highest crime can be committed, a genocide, where you systematically kill people, move from door to door, annihilating everything in your way. This is what Hamas did, indiscriminately. What's happening in Gaza, Israel called the people, say, evacuate this building because we have a tunnel under. Then Hamas go with their propaganda using pictures and videos from Syria to say, look what Israel is doing to us, while they are the ones hijacking an entire society using Palestinians as human shields. This is the devil in action. So, of course, there is no other way but the use of force. And with this, I conclude. The United States of America, after the savage attack against Pearl Harbor, where 400 Japanese suicide airplanes hit the harbor, the United States immediately developed the dirty bomb. And they wiped out Hiroshima and Nagasaki 4 years exactly after this attack. When they did that, the war ended. It was the end of World War II. So sometimes, some of us, could be one of us, would have to take the responsibility to drop a dirty bomb somewhere in order to stop the war from spreading. Because when a majority of people agree on violence, validate violence, justify genocide, and think it's a point of view to become a Nazi, in this day, it all begins with killing Jews. This is what happened last century. And Nazism, many thought of it as a point of view. And now history is repeating itself. And even in the middle of our educational institutions, we've been invaded by Hamas ideology, by the name of Palestine and by the name of revolution. Who cares? Anti-Semitism is Nazism, and it's rejected. It should be rejected on this campus, should be rejected everywhere in the United States. The United States should be the last country that allow this type of mentality to express itself, because Nazism is not a point of view. It is not. And we will never validate savages. So basically, Israel had no other choice but to use the force, and war is ugly. In war, people die. This is why Hamas should have not started this war from the beginning. They dragged all of us into this situation. But what I know for sure, that Israel will end this war. Whatever it takes, we have to eradicate them.
To be respectful of everyone's time, looks like we have about one more question left. And I wanted to tie it back to campus and back to the vote. Much of the dialogue on campus is primarily seen through AR 13025, Accountability in the Face of Genocide, focuses heavily on the past. Students try to explain why their sides' actions are more justified without accepting any accountability for the tumultuous history of the region, and they continue to argue which community has been oppressed more. But as the future leaders of the next generation, we know we can't change the past, but we can influence the future. What conversations do you think we should be having to do so? How do we make our campus a better place, not just for ourselves, but for those who come after us?
I don't think it means not talking about the past, but I think perspective is helpful, and perspective in this region in particular. When when having a conversation about the Middle East, it's really helpful as you have these conversations to try, you want to shape the future, it's really helpful to widen the aperture of the lens. It's really important to look at Assad slaughtering 600,000 of his own people in Syria and asking where the attention of the campus was then. And how do we work to make sure that we're focused on the actual atrocities that are happening in the region? The same thing is true, we should ask about Yemen and the hundreds of thousands of civilians who died in Yemen. And we should ask, where are the same people who claim to be so interested in the oppressed, who are turning away from China's ongoing repression of the Uyghurs? And where are the people who claim to care so much about the rights of free speech? Where were they as Egypt was rounding up journalists after what happened there and throwing them in prison? If we're going to shape a positive future on this campus, it requires that we understand the facts about what's happening in this situation. And I think everyone will leave here with a much deeper understanding of that. But it also requires understanding the obsession that those who are responsible for this resolution have, the obsession with Israel, the obsession with Jews, and the refusal to recognize that there is a bigger world that this campus should be focused on, that there are real abuses that are taking place and that have taken place when too many have been silent. If we're going to think about what the future of this great campus looks like, it starts with that. I'll just finish with this. I know, I was privileged to spend 7 years here. I know how thoughtful students are, how talented students are, and how much you have to contribute to the world. The way that you start that is by finding opportunities like this, frankly, to come together to talk about the challenges of the world and to push back against those voices who seek to silence you and your right to speak out, and who seek to bully you so that you're uncomfortable expressing your views and expressing the facts. The best thing that you can do to shape the strong future on this campus is to make sure that every person that you know in all of your classes, in your fraternities, in your dorms, that every one of them understands that this vote this week is actually about the future and the kind of campus that this is going to be, and whether everyone's voice is going to be respected. And if you do that, and if you start those conversations, you're going to be setting the stage for a much, much brighter future where the voices of those who seek to silence you, who seek to bully you, who seek to ensure that you have no voice on this campus, that those are the voices that will no longer be tolerated on this campus. This great campus must be a campus for everyone. You're being here tonight, you're participating in this event, and your willingness to spend the next couple of days sharing everything you know with everyone you know will help set a course for a much brighter future here. And I'm so grateful that that's what you've all committed yourselves to. And I appreciate those efforts that will ultimately lead to a dramatically better way forward. Thanks for the opportunity tonight, and thanks to all of you for what you're doing, and thanks to the organizers for planning this.
All right, Mosab, do you want to say anything else before we wrap up?
Sure. what is the alternative to Israel? Let's ask ourselves this question. What's the alternative? Israel is not a perfect country. It's just another establishment. It has its own mistakes. There is no such a thing as a perfect system. But the alternative to Israel is Hamas savages or other groups that they have not proven to be accountable, to be responsible, to lead. So in this case, I personally choose Israel. With whatever imperfection there. Because if the savages win, all of us are going to pay the price. If Hamas is not eradicated, and all these attempts, including this vote happening here, it's all connected. They are trying to delegitimize the state of Israel. Pay attention. Who initiated this poll or this vote? They have the sick intention to delegitimize the only respectful state in an ocean of darkness. They want to destroy this model. So the darkness takes over the entire region. But then it will spread to Europe. And then it will spread around the globe. They are already moving. Look what's happening in Europe. It's our responsibility to counter them, not to let them succeed. Because if Israel does not have the necessary cover, political cover, that we are giving them right now in their war against savages, and if Hamas is not eradicated completely in Gaza, we will open the gates of hell everywhere. Because we will encourage many other terrorist groups, not only terrorist groups, could be also criminal groups in Mexico, cartel, drug groups. All of them would look and see that few thousands of terrorists were able to bring a democracy, an entire system, a country, a nation with all their institutions, all the way to their knees. And how many hate groups out there that would love to sabotage so many democracies and so many systems? So do we want to let Hamas win in Gaza and then open the gates of hell? Or instead of all these attempts to delegitimize the state of Israel, we say no. At least it's a democratic system. It's not perfect. Yes, they make mistakes. There is corruption, whatever it is. It's just another country. But at least it believes in dialogue. It's accountable. It has elections. And most importantly, we can negotiate with them. We can talk to them. We can reason with them. We can pressure them. But Hamas, nobody can. So with that said, let them conspire. This is what they are doing in the dark rooms, conspiring, bringing such a vote to a respectful university. It's a wicked act. It should have not been adapted by the university from the first place. But this is how they creep, slowly. So with that said, keep in mind, Israel is not our enemy in this case. The savages are. And all the forces trying to give them a lifeline, we're not going to allow this to happen. And I hope that they fail, and I hope that the savages will be eradicated. Thank you very much, and God bless.